Okay, welcome back to Tech at 10. It's been a stressful morning here. We've been doing some fly swatting. Ryan, today we're going to talk about stress, Tech at 10, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we'll start the counter first. But yeah, we're going to talk about one of the most important things in respect to rearing any form of livestock, and that is stress.
The reduction of it.
Yes.
Okay. So we think about stress. Stress is a natural biological evolutionary response. So acute stress, it's like the zebra being chased by the lion, flight or fight. What's actually happening in a flight or fight scenario?
Well, there's a number of hormones that are being released. We often talk about catecholamines, which are those fight or flight sort of molecules. We also have a lot of cortisol being produced, which, to be perfectly honest, that's the one that everyone kind of talks about. It's always about cortisol.
So that's adrenaline and cortisol.
Yeah.
Glucose has been mobilized. Everything is kind of primed for flight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's acute stress. So evolutionary, biologically, in animals and humans, that's a necessary response. But through domestication and everything like that, we see a different impact on stress. And that is, you mentioned cortisol, and that's kind of chronic stress. So I want to explain a little bit about what chronic stress is, what it does to the immune system, and what it does to the gut as well. So chronic stress, what's the pathway?
Well, again, we all talk about that stress hormone cortisol, but stress influences what's happening in the brain, particularly glands known as the hypothalamus, which produces a hormone known as corticotrophin releasing hormone that sends a message to the anterior pituitary gland, which produces ACTH, which then goes down to these little small glands just above our kidneys known as the adrenals, and they are responsible for producing cortisol.
An example is weaning time on calves, weaning time for sucklers, even sheep. Housing, we did a video on housing. Housing time is again a different stressor. So this cortisol then, it has an impact on immune cells.
Yeah, exactly. It causes a variety of, there we go. It causes a variety of impacts on the white blood cells that we very much rely on for fighting off diseases.
Because when we think about infectious disease, I've talked about this before, call it the seesaw. It's like the balance between immunity and infection pressure. We're trying to drive down infection pressure, the amount of pathogens animals are exposed to. We're trying to drive up immunity, the animal's ability to respond to disease. So if we get a suppression of lymphocytes and macrophages and other immune cells, that has a big impact on overall immune function, doesn't it?
Definitely. So you've just mentioned a few of those, like the macrophages. They're responsible for antigen presentation. So they're pretty much to present any invading force to the actual immune system. So if they're not functioning, we're not in the right place at all. If we have our lymphocytes down, we're not in the right place at all for signaling and killing of any invading forces. So you're completely correct.
Okay, so that's why we talk about the reduction of stress. We always talk about it, but it's important to understand what it's actually doing to the immune system. Then if we go into the gut, it's actually very interesting because cortisol has a very big impact on the gut. And we've done brain and behavior before, but remembering that my artist needs some work with the brain and the spinal cord, there's a vagus nerve as well heading to the gut, and the enteric nervous system down here. And there's a bidirectional pathway between the gut and the brain. Mm-hmm. So there's constant signaling. But when we have stress, there's a couple of things happen. I suppose when we stress, it actually sends signals to increase motility of the gut, which is never good.
Okay.
But at a cellular level, then cortisol does a number of things to the lining of the gut.
Okay, and what would those predominantly be, Tommy?
So there's a mucin layer. So if you go down, this is the circle of the gut, and we go down to the villi, which extend the surface area of the gut. And you go down to intracellularly, there's a transelectrical resistance between cells, okay? And people have heard us probably say it before. Actually, that weakens that transelectrical resistance. So there's a leakiness in the gut, meaning you get translocation of pathogens across the gut. The mucus layer that protects the lining of the gut or the cells, that's reduced.
Okay.
And also cortisol reduces the diversity of the gut microbes. Species like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium can go down. So it has a pretty profound impact. And of course, if you get translocation, so this is the lumen here in a normal gut, you get protection, pathogens don't translocate. But when you get translocation of pathogens in here and leakiness, and we got 70% of the immune system in the gut, it sends up a whole inflammatory response that's gut related.
So is that where we're getting these sort of chronic inflammatory conditions, is this translocation of unfavorable microbial agents?
Across the gut, yeah.
Getting it.
And then you have that feedback loop. Remember, we said stress increases gut motility, but when you have an unfavorable gut environment, a lot of the hormones are synthesized in the gut. So it's this vicious two-way cycle. When things are going badly, you've got the direct response, but then you've actually got the signaling system back to the brain can impact behavior as well. And this, we see that a lot in pets. We see leaky gut in pets, horses, and humans. But I think it's a factor even in a lot of our, maybe at our cows at calving time, sheep at lambing time, hind gut inflammation, leading this leaky gut, the stress leading to leaky gut. There's a lot of work been done in this area. I think this is a really interesting area when we think about stress, leaky gut, and the translocation of antigens is often these lipopolysaccharides. Often we see with coliforms.
So that's that toxic stuff being produced by gram-negative bacteria, coliforms. Okay.
And I think that's a really interesting part of the whole stress pathway that sets off, which is the big, in both humans and animals, inflammation, excess inflammation is a big problem in that space.
Okay, so what you're saying is we often talk about cortisol at a very high level or a top level, that it's going to increase the incidence of disease, but it's having quite direct cellular impacts.
Yeah,
within the gut.
The gut, huge.
And then on top of that too, 70% of your immune system is there, but even the other 30% is being impacted by cortisol levels going up.
Yeah, and I think we're managing animals. We think about stress. There's some stress factors that are avoidable, and then there's some that's unavoidable. I think we talked in a video a few weeks ago with the horse, stabling, exercise, hard feed, competition, transport. We think about calves, weather, feed, changing onto milk pasture. These are all normal stressors. That's why I suppose PM for me, Precision Microbes, as a tool been given every day in feed to horses or with the calf pro and postbiotic liquid, is offsetting the impacts of some of the natural stressors, particularly when we see it with calves that occur in the first weeks of life.
So you're talking about helping the mucus layer, the tight junctions, the diversity, and this signaling pathway to keep it correct. That's what we're trying to target.
You're offsetting some of the impacts of stress in the gut.
Yes. And again, going back to you saying that calves or lambs or horses, they're often subject to multiple stressors at a time. I often like that phrase that you said, stop stacking stressors. That's probably the best thing that we can do. As opposed, because there's a lot of stresses we can't avoid. So it's just trying to minimize how many are happening concurrently. Yeah,
so if you think about calves for dehorning, we're changing onto milk replacer, we might be doing some other handling thing, we might be moving them, we might be vaccinating them, doing all these things in the one day. That's all stacking stressors. Or if you're dehorning, castrating and turning out the grass at the one time, time might be a factor there, but we try and not, keep a week between stressors and calf rearing. Again, if we look at any animal or human, that's just a reduction of overall stress. Some things are inevitable, but just to understand the pathophysiology of stress has a pretty direct impact on the gut. And that's why, Precision Microbes as a tool, both calf rearing and with our complementary feed and equine, and we see it with pets as well, with chronic inflammatory conditions, is having such an impact. And people will talk about, well, they're gut-related products. Why are we seeing systemic issues? Well, if you're improving inflammation in the gut, if you're reducing down that issues with leakiness, you're seeing the whole absorption, digestive capacity of the animal going up. You're going to see, the coat and the skin and all those kind of things as well.
Well, if 70% of the immune cells of the body are found within the gut, if we can kind of keep them tailored down, a lot of our maintenance energy requirements are going to be maintenance. They're not going to be going up and up and up because these guys are getting activated for an unnecessary inflammatory process. So, no, I think you've fairly much covered everything off there down to the cells. So, I think it's a really interesting space. As you said, there's a lot more research going into it. Talking about just cortisol at a high level, we kind of need to understand each and every impact that it has at the cells. So, very, very interesting.
Good. Okay. If you have a tech and 10 subject you want us to cover, we'll cover our own, obviously. But if you want us to cover something, let us know. And if you have any questions about Precision Microbes, applications, info@precisionmicrobes.com.